Christopher Faraone. I first learned about his work, I think, my first year in graduate school. I took a course with one of his colleagues now, Michelle Lowry, on speech acts and performance theory. And the article that he wrote was on performative future and Hellenistic incantations, and it really influenced me a lot because of the balance of literary theory, linguistics, and hardcore philology. And I think this integration of different fields, this essentially interdisciplinary nature of his work, characterizes both Faraone's long-term research program and also the best of what classics still has to offer. And I must say, I'm sorry to do this, when I printed out his CV, it took me 4 pages to find the article that so influenced me. His CV is 21 pages long. And if you look at it, it is impressive and a lesson in what a scholar can accomplish, not just in a career, but mid-career. He's still going and has so much coming out. So Faraone comes to us from the University of Chicago, where over many years now he's established himself as a leading scholar of ancient religion and magic with numerous high-profile book and journal publications. He presented on conferences, in conferences everywhere, and it would be easier to list the journals that have not published articles by him in classics than those that have. Is the hyperbole working out for you guys? It's turning a little red here. So, you know, as I said, in his scholarly work he demonstrates commitment to classics and classical philology rigidly, as well as to a wide theoretical engagement with material culture, which many of us literary people find frightening. Working on archaeology, he's looking at the gems here at SAMA this week. He uses traditional literary criticism, gender theory, performance theory, and ritual studies to bring to bear upon ancient texts the fullness of their potential meanings. This great success as an integrator of different fields of inquiry makes him a fine reader of Greek poetry. And his collections like Magika Hiera, Ancient Greek Magic and Religion, Mass of Dionysus, Initiation in Ancient Greek Rituals and Narratives, and Animal Sacrifice Revisited, as well as his own books attest to this. His articles really are a lesson for all of us in learning the range of meanings available in approaching texts, objects, and ideas from the ancient world. Recently, in addition to magic and traditional philology, he has explored religion and magic in the Roman world, so he's moved to the dark side of classics to Rome. But especially from archaeological perspectives in his work writing Greek amulets in Roman imperial times, and work like What's New in Ancient Roman Magic. In recognition of his excellence as a scholar, Faraone has been an associate educator of classical philology, a Guggenheim Fellow, a scholar in residence at the Getty Research Center, a Fellow of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, and a Fellow at the Center for Hellenic Studies, and now your Brackenridge Distinguished Visiting Professor at UTSA. So I'm happy to introduce Chris today to present his keynote lecture, Text, Image, and Medium, The Evolution of Greco-Roman Magical Gemstones.
Thanks, Joe. This lecture involves a handout and PowerPoint, and I should tell you, I only learned to do PowerPoint about 4 years ago when my 22-year-old daughter shamed me into it. She said she had been doing PowerPoint since the 4th grade. You know, she could do it, I could do it. So I'm not sure I'm coordinated enough to do both, but we'll see. I want to thank Joel and everyone for all the good preparation that went into this conference. It looks like a great conference, and I'm really glad to be here. So let me start. The world of the Roman Empire seems, to modern scholars at least, to be marked by an explosion of images and texts on metal, papyri, mosaics, and gemstones, all designed to protect or heal. By some accounts, this proliferation of readily identifiable amulets can most easily be explained by a sudden need for magic, or a precipitous rise in superstition in this period. In my ongoing work on Greek amulets, I've taken to calling this historical argument or assumption the Big Bang theory for the creation of Greco-Roman amulets, and it is a problematic one. First and foremost, I argue that it is unlikely that the diverse populations of such a large geographic area, from Great Britain to Afghanistan, Afghanistan, from the Danube River to the edge of the Sahara, all got superstition within a few generations. I suggest, in fact, that these amulets were not invented out of whole cloth in this period, but rather they only become visible to us in the archaeological record because of the increased epigraphic habit of the Roman imperial period. Or to put it another way, it is only when amuletic texts appear on gems that we become aware that these gems and the images on them were themselves believed to have magical powers to protect and heal. Such an argument is, of course, much larger than I can attempt in this lecture, so I will limit myself to the discussion of 5 kinds of gemstones: hematite, lapis lazuli, and 3 different colored types of jasper that were designed to be set into rings and pendants and then used as personal amulets. These gems are, however, a problematic source for historical study because although there are several thousand examples in museums around the world, only a few dozen can be accurately dated by archaeological context. The great majority were surface finds and ended up in private collections or museums without any documentation at all. And because until recently there has been no effort to date stylistic change in the corpus, these gemstones are usually assigned rather vaguely to the Roman imperial or late antique periods. In what follows, I shall suggest how we might, with proper care, trace the evolution or the historical development of some of these traditional types of amulets. My central claim is that prior to the Roman period, simpler uninscribed versions of these gems were undoubtedly used as amulets, and that the sorcerers and stonecutters of the Roman period innovated primarily by adding text to the gem in question. My argument rests in part on the well-established fact that prior to the Roman period, inscriptions of any sort are rare on gems and limited almost exclusively to the names of their owners or occasionally to the artists who carved them. We shall see, moreover, that in my last case study of hematite stones used for gynecological complaints, we are able to sketch the development from a simple Greek type to more complex versions that add Egyptian symbols and gods. I begin with a series of green jasper gems used to cure stomachache and heartburn, a type discussed by the Greek physician Galen. This is the first item on your handout. The testimony of some authorities attributes to certain stones a peculiar quality which is actually possessed by the light green jasper. Worn as an amulet, it benefits the stomach and the esophagus. Some set it in a ring and engrave on it a radiant serpent, just as King Nicepsos prescribed in his 14th book. Of this stone, I too had personal experience. I made a string of small stones of this type and hung it from my neck at such a length that the stones touched the esophagus. They seemed no less beneficial, even though they had not the design that Nicepsos had prescribed. Galen lived in the Roman imperial period, but the book he cites was written several centuries earlier in Ptolemaic times, probably by a Hellenized Egyptian pretending to be Nicepso, one of the last native pharaohs. A few centuries after Galen made his experiment, Marcellus of Bordeaux recorded a similar recipe in Latin. This is handout 2. This is a powerful remedy for pain of the stomach. On a jasper stone, carve a radiant serpent so that it has 7 rays, enclose it in gold, and employ it on the neck. He does not say, however, what color the jasper should be. We have then 3 different recipes to guide us, each from a different historical period. Nicepso's Hellenistic version, which involves green jasper and the radiant serpent set in a finger ring. Galen's Roman imperial experiment, a string of plain green jasper stones hung over the esophagus, and in Marcellus's late antique recipe, jasper and the radiant serpent set in gold and hung around the neck. As it turns out, these written sources correspond in part with archaeological remains for more than 60 examples of this type of gemstone have been discovered in the Mediterranean basin, and they generally date to the era in which Galen lived. You can see the designs most clearly in the drawing of the gem in number 3 on the handout, but I'll show you 2 more examples in the slides because it is important to appreciate the green color of the gems. The first is a gem from Berkeley, and the second is a gem in Perugia. In both we find the lion-headed serpent that Galen mentions with solar rays emanating from his head. These gems almost always have on their reverse sides a standard name and symbol that you can see here, the word knumis or knubis, and a symbol formed by 3 S's with a line running through them. The appearance of these names and symbols on nearly all the extant amulets is puzzling, because if you look back on the handout, you will see that neither Galen nor Marcellus mentions any inscribed text in their descriptions. There is, in short, a major disagreement between the archaeological evidence and the literary testimonial. Greek inscriptions on these two gems seem, moreover, to be names or symbols used to invoke the radiant serpent god to come and heal the patient. We sometimes find a series of epithets. This is in handout 4A and 4B, such as breaker of giants or crusher of snakes. And the idea that Cnubis is invoked by his name in these epithets is in fact proved by some brief prayers that are occasionally inscribed on these gems. For example, on the back of a Cnubis gem in Paris, this is 4C on the handout, keep the stomach of Proclus healthy rather, or on the back of a Berkeley gem 4D, avert all tension, all indigestion, and all pain from the stomach of Julian, whom none bore. A badly chipped greenish-yellow Jasper in the British Museum has a different request, inscribed around the head of the serpent. Cnubis, digest, digest. One in which Cnubis himself is apparently imagined to enter the stomach and help digest the food of the patient. To sum up our first case, then, some Greeks clearly felt that the medium was crucial to the efficacy of the amulet, especially from what Galen says about the importance of the contact between the green jasper stones and the patient's body. The image of the divine solar serpent, on the other hand, seems to indicate the protective or healing presence of the god, somewhat like the presence of a statue in a temple or a house. The names and epithets, sometimes in evocative, and especially the prayers, support this idea because they all seem to invoke Cnubis to stop the headache or to help digest the food. My second category is a series of blue gemstones, either of lapis lazuli or blue glass, that show the famous image of Aphrodite Anadyomene, as in these examples. This image was invented by the Greek painter Apelles in the 4th century BC, and it depicts the goddess arising from the sea after being born from the severed genitals of Uranos. On the back of these gems, we often find the magical word auroriphrasis, as you can see from the example in number 5 on the handout, which is a lapis lazuli gem in London. The connection in this series between text, image, and medium is not immediately clear. In Egypt, Aphrodite was often assimilated to the goddess Hathor, who has as one of her native epithets the title, the Lady of the Blue Stone. And indeed, we do find inscribed on one lapis gem of this type the name Hathor, and before the name auroriphrasis. This Egyptian connection then suggests some logic to the appearance of the magical name and the image of Aphrodite on these blue stones. As in the case of the Cnubis gem, a rare inscribed prayer tells us more about the perceived power of the amulet. This is number 6 on the handout. It's on a lapis gem in Paris. Auroriphrasis gives charm to the one who bears this gem. It would seem then that, like the name Cnubis, auroriphrasis identifies a divinity, probably Aphrodite, who is thereby invoked to produce charm and beauty in the person who wears the gem. The powers of this type of amulet are well illustrated by the authors of the Humanities, an encyclopedic work on amulets of imperial date, which preserves earlier traditions and recipes. And this is number 7 on the handout. There are 2 recipes. The first one is in the Uranthus stone, the multicolored one. Aphrodite is engraved, binding up her hair, the locks on her head, and the root of the plant, arugula, and the tongue of the nightingale are put underneath. Set the stone and wear it, and you will be loved by everybody. And it will be well known and seem sweet-voiced not only to human beings, but also to the gods and demons. Second recipe, if someone bears the right eye of a bird called the wryneck under stainless lapis lazuli, in which Aphrodite is engraved, the bearer will be charming, he will be famous among people, he will gain every lawsuit. The left eye has the same effect if it's borne by women. As in medical descriptions of the Cnubis amulets, these recipes do not instruct us to inscribe magical names or symbols on these 2 bluish gems. The first one is an opal, and the second is lapis lazuli, although they do add another feature that is invisible to us in the archaeological record. Plant or animal matter placed beneath the gem, presumably between the gemstone and its setting. It is difficult to see any obvious evolution in the case of these blue amulets, given the focus on erotic charm Classicists and classical archaeologists are apt to see the image of Aphrodite as the most important and original focus for this series. And since the image is of Aphrodite emerging from the sea, the blue color may have seemed appropriate to the Greeks. Nevertheless, I suspect that the connection with Hathor as the Lady of the Blue Stone and the type of stone both point to an earlier Egyptian practice, especially since lapis lazuli was popular in Egypt for many centuries before the Greeks discovered it. It is interesting to note that the use of this traditional amulet seems to have continued in Egypt down to Byzantine times, as we can see in this golden lapis necklace in Dunbar Noakes, said to come from Egypt. Here Aphrodite, rendered in gold, strikes the familiar pose against the background of the seashell carved from lapis lazuli. There are no discernible words or magical symbols on this piece, but I would not be too far off the mark to suggest that its owner may have known about the charm-giving power of this image and this blue stone. A third type of popular amulet in the Roman world was a yellow jasper gemstone inscribed with an 8-legged scorpion, as we see here on this gem in Paris. Like many of this type, this gem also has on its reverse a yet-to-be-deciphered magical word, or menhiniambo. Museum catalogs are apt to file this Parisian gem under the rubric magical because of this strange word on its reverse. But if you look back on the handout in number 8, you'll see that a scorpion gem in London with the same yellow jasper medium is liable to be categorized as an animal type because its reverse side is uninscribed. In modern eyes, then, the text is once again the crucial feature that makes a scorpion gem magical and makes it an amulet. The fact that Scorpio is one of the signs of the zodiac and that these yellow scorpion gems sometimes depict stars, crescent moons, or scales of Libra further complicates matters. Indeed, one might go so far as to catalog the British gem on the handout as astrological because of the single star placed over the scorpion's head. But since such stars appear often on magical gems, one cannot press the point. It is, however, much easier to see the astrological orientation in yet another gem in Paris, which is surrounded by other astrological signs. The astrological use of these gems was, however, uncommon, and most scholars nowadays agree that it constitutes a later and a novel adaptation or interpretation generated by the appearance of the scorpion in both systems. As it turns out, yellow jasper was used by itself as a painkiller for scorpion sting. Here, a lapidary text is once again crucially helpful. See number 9 on the handout. Agate stones. The agates have the greatest power. They are from Hermes. The one that has a color similar to the pelt of a lion is powerful to set upon those who have been stung by a scorpion or ground up and applied with water. For immediately it makes the victim painless. It is also suitable for those bitten by vipers, ground up and applied to the bite, or even drunk with wine. The innate magical power of this yellow gem is deployed in 3 different ways: as an amulet placed directly on a sting or bite, when ground up in water and applied as an ointment, or when drunk with wine. The authors do not tell us, however, to engrave an image of the scorpion or any magical letters in these recipes. The power lies in the medium itself. And although this text does not claim protective powers for the yellow stone, this seems to be part of its repertoire. As you can see, if you look back, and sorry, this is on the wrong page. You look back, turn back to one page of the handout, and look at number 8 there at the bottom of the page. You'll see an inscription on a yellow jasper gem in Romania, carved with the scorpion. And the inscription ends with a plea to protect the owner of the amulet. The Greek word is phylloxon. Today, scholars have offered no compelling explanation for this close connection between the yellow jasper and scorpions. As it turns out, several species of the scorpion found in the eastern Mediterranean. 2 are especially feared: the familiar dark black scorpion with its arched tail, those are the ones you see in Hollywood movies, and a much smaller species called the yellow Palestinian scorpion, which, because of its yellow or light brown color, blends in more easily with soil and sand. The yellow scorpion is in fact the most dangerous of scorpions because of its camouflage and because of the power of its venom. It can kill a small child in a matter of hours and completely disable a grown man for a day or 2. I suggest then that the consistent yellow color of these scorpion gems is as important as the image. The yellow stone inscribed with the scorpion is designed to keep yellow scorpions away by a twofold strategy of like banning like. The yellow scorpion is moreover found all around the Mediterranean basin, but not in northern Europe, so it is interesting to note that only a single yellow scorpion gem has been found on northern European soil, in sharp contrast to many other types used for colic, stomachache, or gynecological problems. This insight can, of course, be overturned by future discoveries, but it suggests that the production and use of these yellow scorpion amulets was limited to areas where the yellow scorpion dwelt. There is finally abundant evidence that the Egyptians in Pharaonic times also used images of scorpions to drive scorpions away, and we even have some evidence that they inscribed them on yellow stones. Here we see a yellowish-brown stone, in this case glazed steatite, set in a ring discovered on the left hand of a mummy of a noblewoman called Conifer, who served in the court of Queen Hatshepsut more than a millennium before the Greeks and Romans arrived in Egypt. We see a similar combination of animal image and type of stone and magical word in a series of gems designed to cure and keep away diseases of the eyes. Here we are especially fortunate, see number 10 on the handout, to have a series of recipes as our guide, as well as confirmation from the natural historians. According to our earliest witnesses, Pliny the Elder, this is number 10A on the handout, a green lizard must be blinded and shut inside a glass vessel with rings of iron or gold. After the lizard has recovered its sight, it is released, and these rings are used to cure the disease. The alien testifies as an eyewitness a few centuries later to a more complicated process. I'll paraphrase the underlying bits here. He watched someone put a green lizard in a new earthenware pot. He puts an unnamed herb in with the lizard and an iron ring with a lignite stone carved with an image of a lizard. He says simply that this ring was good for the eyes. The most complex recipe, however, is in the Humanities again, and I will read it entirely. This is 10C. If then you take 2 nails, blind a lizard with them, and throw them into a pot that also has virgin earth, and let it be for 6 days, upon opening the pot, you will find the lizard seeing. Let this lizard go free and make the nails into rings and wear them, placing the blinded right eye in the ring on the right side and the left eye into the ring on the left side. And also enclosed in these, a Jasper stone that has a carved lizard stretching out on the stomach and is inscribed Hiera. Beneath this, the name Huth-Sule. For in this way you will be unharmed in your eyes for all your years, and you will heal ophthalmia sufferers by fastening them to the ring. In this recipe, then, we hear that the ring contains the lizard's eyes and a Jasper gemstone carved with the image of a lizard. This is, moreover, a nearly unique case in which a literary text tells us to inscribe words on a gemstone. The Humanities recipe does not say what kind of jasper is used for this amulet, but a series of gems, usually of dappled green or gold jasper, seem to have been made in this fashion, as these 4 examples in Paris show us. Note that although both Pliny and Aelian say the lizard should be green or even excessively green, the color of these gems in most examples of this type seem to mimic, in one way or other, the dappled green or gold skin of a lizard. Of these 4 gems, the 2 on the top of the slide show the lizard with its head in a crescent moon, and 1 Greek letter at each foot, a pi, an eta, a rho, and an alpha, which taken at that order spell out pera, a word that is quite close to the word pera, recommended by the Humanities passage. There are, of course, variations. The lizards on the bottom of the slide have no crescent moons, and the one on the bottom right lacks the 4 letters. On their reverse, 3 of the gems have the same word, kanthesule, which is again similar to the word huthesule, preserved in the Humanities passage. This is, let me say again for emphasis, an almost unique case where the lapidary prescribed both the image and the letters that are to appear on stone. The standard inscriptions on these lizard gems may, moreover, be comprehensible Greek, words that refer to different stages of the ritual. You can see this on number 13 on the handout. The 4 letters on the obverse side of most of these gems seem to add up to the word pera, an adjective meaning maimed or blinded in the feminine case, which describes the blinded lizard. This refers, of course, to the initial blinding of the lizard in the recipes quoted earlier. The inscription on the back of the gem is usually written as 2 words, kanthe sule, which have been plausibly interpreted as kanthe suule, heal yourself, something like that. Since more than half of the extant examples have this inscription on the reverse and pera on the obverse, this would seem to be the standard version. These various recipes suggest, once again, some details that we're bound to miss in the archaeological record. The rings themselves are sometimes fashioned from the same iron nails used to gouge out the eyes, and sometimes the eyes of the lizard themselves are placed beneath the gemstone to become part of the amulet. The use of an image of a lizard on a modeled green jasper is easy to understand, of course, as an attempt to imitate the natural colors of the animal, but the implied magical action is not so simple as like banding like, as in the case of the yellow scorpion gems. Here, indeed, the 2 sides of the gem seem to correspond to the 2 parts of the ritual preparation. First, the lizard is blinded and sealed in a pot, so the obverse inscription reads blinded, and on the other side, the second part of the ritual, when the lizard is allowed to go free, corresponds to the command on the reverse of the stone, which seems to encourage the second stage of the lizard's experience, the regeneration of its eyes. In each recipe, moreover, rings or stones that were placed in the container with the blinded lizard become empowered by contact with it during the regeneration process. It is, in short, a case of magical power by contact or contagion. The human patient, because he wears the ring, will undergo the same experience as the lizard. Although he suffers some eye disease by carrying the gem, his eyes will become healthy again, just like the eyes of the lizard were regenerated. In this case, too, the medium seems to imitate the natural color of the animal, but for different reasons. The yellow jasper amulets imitate the color of the dangerous scorpion, who will be banned by the stone according to the logic of like banding like, whereas the dappled green jasper imitates the color of a benign animal and its power to regenerate its eyes. My 5th and final example is the use of hematite, gynecological amulets, such as this gemstone in Rome. This provides a good example of the typically reddish-brown color and slightly metallic texture of this type of stone, which is in fact an ore of iron. The name of the stone means bloodstone in Greek, and it explains its medical usefulness. One of its primary functions seems to have been to control the flow of blood, usually from a woman's uterus, although these same gems could be used to prevent premature birth, to stop the womb from wandering, and even to heal intestinal diseases, which presumably are also marked by internal bleeding. The imagery on this, the simplest version of the series, is entirely Greek. The spherical object on the obverse reflects the common idea or image of a woman's womb in the earliest Greek medical writers, who described the womb as an inverted jug or as a cupping device. We can see an illustration, number 15 on the handout, of it from a manuscript of the Greek gynecologist Uranus. The small device on the gemstone below the womb, it looks a little bit like a modern toothbrush with a short and bent handle, is in fact an ancient Greek door key that in this scheme controls the opening and closing of the patient's womb. On the other side of these gems, we most often find the single word, authorship. As in the case of the nonsensical magical words on the back of the Aphrodite and scorpion gem, there is no consensus on the meaning of this word. It is not Greek, and although a number of Egyptian and Hebrew words have been deduced to explain it, none have been convincing. As in the case of some of the other gems, the fuller incantations suggest that authorship is a name. The expansive and unique title, this is number 16A on the handout, the expansive and unique title on the back of one gem from Cairo, for example, Lord of the Womb of Women, authorship Aubax, evokes a male demon, or god, or angel. On the other hand, a text found on some other stones suggests the womb itself is being commanded to contract or stop moving. For example, number 16B is composed in a full iambic trimeter, contract womb lest Typhon seize you. In these cases, then, the womb is invoked, not a god, and since the womb is indeed depicted on the gem, perhaps authorship is a non-Greek word or epithet that means womb. In a slightly more complex version of this series, the uterus and the key are surrounded by an Ouroboros, a well-known Egyptian device of a snake eating its own tail. You can see that in the bottom of the mouth of the... Usually he's actually munching on the tail, but this one is not close enough. Here the snake either protects the womb from outside harm or protects it from moving. On many gems of this type, we also find Egyptian gods standing or sitting on top of the womb, as in this example. Because of the large number of complicated images like these, it is commonplace to label all of these womb amulets Greco-Egyptian and to assert or assume that Egyptian ideas or practices exercise the strongest influence on them. This certainly may be true of the most complicated versions, such as the one you see on the slide, but theorizing Egyptian influence as the strongest makes it difficult to explain the existence of the simplest designs, which show only Greek images of the womb and the key and the magic word Aurora Youth, but no Egyptian snakes or no gods at all. The evidence suggests, in fact, that like the other gem types discussed this evening, these hematite gems underwent some period of evolution from a simple form that gradually, from a simple to more complex form. I suggest that uninscribed hematite was first used alone in the Greek world as an ametite for gynecological bleeding and other complaints. This first stage is in fact assured, since Greek doctors were already in the classical period prescribing the use of ground up hematite in drinks and ointments for similar complaints. The second step seems to have been the addition of the womb and key device to the hematite stone. Both images are Greek and seem to engage in a simple form of sympathetic magic, designed to lock up the contents of the womb and make the bleeding stop. We know, moreover, that the womb and key device lies at the heart of the magical operation because it appears on nearly all of the 200 amulets of this type. The Egyptian gods, on the other hand, appear on nearly 2/3 of them, usually in the same peripheral position on top of the womb, having little to do with the key and the magical action depicted in the center of the design. The Ouroboros and the miniature Egyptian deities, in other words, enhance the primary power of the stone in the Greek image, but they do not seem to be crucial or original to the operation of the amulet. So let me conclude. Oops, that's right. In most cases summarized in the chart on number 17 on your handout, you can trace the evolution of these Greek magical gemstones from an initially powerful but unadorned and uninscribed stone that was believed to have innate curative, pain-killing, and other powers. I have also added in square brackets a series of red jasper stones inscribed with Heracles and the lion, as you see here, that I did not have time to talk about today. Here, too, the medical or lapidary sources accurately describe the median and image of the amulet, but make no mention of the triple kappas that appear on the backs of many of these Heracles gems. The natural properties of other media discussed this evening make their choice more obvious. We have seen, for example, that hematite and yellow jasper, when ground up and mixed in with liquids or for drinking or application, were used to cure a patient of the same problems for which the amulets were applied. And Galen's experiment with green jasper proved, to his satisfaction at least, that this medium, when placed near the site of his heartburn, was equally effective without any image engraved upon it. The lapidary handbooks likewise claim that if you place an unadorned yellow stone on a scorpion sting, it will alleviate the pain. There is evidence, in short, that the Greeks believed that 3 of the 5 types of gemstones discussed today had effective therapeutic powers without any image or any text added to them. At some stage, however, the sorcerers or the stonecutters do add to the gems, and I suggest that the images came first. We saw, for example, that the scorpion was a very old Egyptian image and was probably thought to have the inherent power of averting scorpions according to the principle of like banning like. The images of Aphrodite and Cnubis, on the other hand, were relatively new. The former was a late 4th century invention of the Greek painter Apelles, and the latter is first attested in Hellenistic Egypt. Although blue Aphrodite makes no sense, perhaps, in the traditional iconography, in the traditional Greek iconography of this goddess, the color of the stone is important in the case of the 2 gems engraved with the images of animals. Indeed, the yellow color of the scorpion gems and the dapple green color of the lizard gems seem to be drawn from nature. The former band the yellow scorpion, while the latter, by the process of contagion, transfers to the patient the two-stage experience of the green lizard as it regenerates its eyes. We have seen, too, that by distinguishing a central and ever-present image from the peripheral ones, we can trace the development of an amulet from the center outwards. The scorpion is placed centrally in nearly every gem of its type, whereas the stars and crescent moons, which appear on a minority of examples around the edges of the central figure, were probably added later to adapt these traditional images to new astrological uses. We see the same centrifugal development most clearly, however, on the uterine amulets, which likewise deploy Egyptian images like the Ouroboros serpent on the outer edge of the gem, or place tiny Egyptian gods on top of the womb. The central and ever-present womb key device, however, is the crucially important image. It uses purely Greek images and ideas that are probably no earlier than the classical period. All this suggests that the late classical and early Hellenistic periods may have been a special time when many of these images were beginning to be added to powerful media. Greek Aphrodite to Egyptian lapis lazuli, Egyptian Cnubis to green jasper, and the Greek womb and key to hematite. Of the three important features of magical gems, text is clearly the last to arrive. This is perfectly obvious in the medical and lapidary sources which accurately describe the images, Cnubis and Aphrodite, but only once prescribe Greek words. The texts found on the extant gems, moreover, are always inscribed with Greek letters and seem in most cases to be names or epithets, which are usually not comprehensible as Greek. For example, Aurora Phrasis, Aurora Youth, or Orchmin Kiniambon, the one found on the back of the scorpion gems. Here again, the lizard gems are doubly different. The words to be inscribed appear to be comprehensible Greek, and they are also preserved in the lapidary recipes. How then does one explain the fact that the literary texts, some of them of the 6th century CE date, usually do not mention the texts we find inscribed on the gems themselves as early as the 2nd century CE? The only possible explanation is that the authors of the lapidaries and medical texts were copying older pre-Roman recipes which were codified before the addition of texts. This is in fact explicit in Galen's description of the green jasper, when he mentions the Hellenistic treatise and the Kepso, which describes the green jasper gemstone and the image of the radiant serpent, but is silent about any text or symbol. The title of this lecture begins with the words text, image, and medium, and in addition to being a gently rising tricolon, reflects perfectly my own philological training and prejudice. In the past, I have tended in my work on ancient magic to begin with text, add a few images if necessary, and only rarely think about the media into which these texts and images are inscribed. In the course of my study of the magical gemstones, however, I am more and more convinced that the ancients viewed the importance of these three features in precisely the reverse order, and that this view reflects the evolution of these gems over time. It is, I suggest, only in the Roman period when the written text takes on any importance at all. But as we have seen this evening, there were probably a number of powerful stones and powerful images circulating around the Mediterranean basin long before the advent of the Roman Empire and the habit of inscribing text on gems. Thank you. Question?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, that was really interesting. Mike, I was wondering, to return to the lining of the lizard and you put the nail in the pot.
Yeah.
It strikes, I think I'm probably just repeating what you're saying, but it seems to me that what it's saying is that there isn't anything inherently powerful about the metal that the ring is made of, so it needs to be, like you said, it needs to get the contagion.
Right.
So is then implicit in that the stones do have some kind of inherent power, and you're suggesting that you're offering all these different possibilities of why that is, when
right.
that it might look like a lizard, or...
Yeah, so I think that those lizard recipes, the original idea was you took the eyes of the lizard and you carried them with you, and somehow when those eyes touch your body, they help you. All right, and I didn't have time to deal with this in this, but I have a long article coming out in the Festschrift for a friend of mine in which I show there's about a dozen recipes for a variety of eyes: lizard eyes, snake eyes. They're usually animals that have extra large eyes, right? And there's even a Pliny tells us that a Roman noble wore in a sack around his neck a fly, a living fly, muscos. He must have changed it all the time. But in that case, I think, because the flies have weird eyes too. So there's so the earlier tradition seems to have been just to use the eyes of these animals, and then. But it's only in the Roman period when they want to. There's a move from what I would call natural organic materials to more permanent materials, that they swap out the actual eye for images of the lizard. So if you look at those three passages I have, Pliny says nothing about an image of a lizard, right? But the image and the words are very important to the Humanities, recipe. A few centuries later, you see the same thing. There's a tradition of using red jasper gems on women's thighs to quicken the birth process. And these gems, they're mentioned by Dioscorides, and I have discovered, Ann Hansen and I have discovered two different examples that have inscriptions on them that confirm this reading. But I think it's Serenus, or no, I think it's the Hippocratic. One of the Hippocratic authors say that if you take a tuft of red wool and tie it around a woman's thigh, that makes birth happen faster. So there again, you see you're going from an organic material, wool that's dyed red, right? And in the Roman period, that becomes a gem that's more permanent. So you have the same kind of evolution. Other questions? Yeah.
So. Do you know anything about how these things are worn? Because I feel that at least some of these would be, like, for bright gemstones, best left concealed. I have a hard time imagining someone wearing the "I have digestive problems" ring, or the "I'm wearing a ring to make people like me better."
Well, that's a good question. The Aphrodite gems, if you set it in a ring or wore it as a pendant around your neck, you'd only see Aphrodite. The magical inscription is on the back. So. And it's occasionally they'll put the magical inscription on the front, but so the idea is that people wouldn't know. I mean, if they weren't, unless they were in the know, they wouldn't actually know what that. It would look like an innocuous ornament, right? The gems for stomach ache and intestinal problems are interesting because some of the authors say to put it around the neck, right? And so Galen says wear it so it rests right here, right? And that's where you get heartburn. Okay, so he's worried about heartburn. There's another recipe for colic, which is an irritation of the bowels. And the Marcellus of Bordeaux says, if you have a pain on the right side, wear the ring in your right hand. If you have a pain on the left, so they had a sense of some proximity. So you had to get the stone somewhere near the affliction. So, but I think people would wear these every day if they had to. What's interesting about these gemstones is they're usually for chronic illnesses, right? There's no gemstone to heal a broken leg, right, or something like that. So, I mean, when you get to be around my age, chronic illnesses. You have heartburn, you have headaches, and so on and so forth. Those are the kinds of things that they use amulets for. Tom.
Thanks, Chris. In regard to the green Jasper gemstones with the symbolism of the radiant serpent, how do you interpret that symbolism? Is it apotropaic? Is the idea that we have digestive problems because a demon is attacking us, and the serpent and the symbolism of light is meant to frighten the demons away? Or do you interpret it some other way?
I think that the Knubis is a god that will protect you. All right. So Knubis that serpent is a Hellenistic version of the Egyptian god Knub, who is the creative god, the potter god in Pharaonic Egypt. So sometime in the Hellenistic period, he gets depicted as this radiant serpent. And in general, solar deities tend to be protective in the way these magical gems work. So I think that in general, the serpent is there because it's on the ring, it's on your finger or on your chest, and that somehow you can pray to it. That's what those prayers are for, and that somehow he cures the stomachache. There's never any mention of demons, but if you look at the handout on page 1, the epithets are breaker of giants, right, and crusher of snakes. So I have this theory, but I've been unable to prove it. That's why I didn't mention it in the lecture. Is that they understood worms in the stomach, in the intestinal tract, which is a common complaint in the Mediterranean area. So maybe this Cubus was thought to fight against worms or snakes, but there's no explicit mention of that. What really interests me is that he says to digest, digest the food. And when I was in the British Museum 2 years ago looking at these gems, I noticed that they had about 10 of them that were the size of your fingernail on your pinky. And they were also they were cut not to be set in gemstones, but they were cut they were convex on both sides.